Welcome in to the 48 Minutes Podcast on Believe. I'm Ross Geiger, the former NBA video coordinator, and I'm joined alongside Bruce Bernstein, our four-time Emmy Award winner who spent more than 3 decades at ESPN producing NBA shows, SportsCenter, and soaking up knowledge from the best UK analysts in the business. Also joining us is the 2-time Emmy Award winner, Michael Woldby-Freer, who's a senior writer at Stat Factor, specializing in writing advanced statistical NBA reports for various announcers across the league. This is episode number 245, the G.G. Jackson episode, as one of my favorite youngsters in the NBA wears number 45 with the Memphis Grizzlies. Hey, fellas, now that Taylor Jenkins is in Milwaukee, can we get G.G. to possibly follow him there?
Why not?
I would love that. It'd be great. And I think he'd be a good fit next to Giannis and be able to stretch the floor for them. So maybe we'll see if that can happen here in the near future. But before we get to any off-season talk, let's definitely talk about this NBA playoffs because it's been an exciting run thus far. We've got some Game 6 and Game 7 series recaps to get to here tonight, along with previewing the set matchups in round 2. So let's go ahead and start out in the West as the Minnesota Timberwolves defeated the Denver Nuggets in 6 games despite Minnesota's key injuries. I'm not suggesting that the Nuggets clean house, but I stand with what Joker said after being eliminated in Game 6. And I quote, "If we were in Serbia, we would all be fired." Bruce, to me, it's hard to sum up the Nuggets season without mentioning the word failure, as this team was one of the teams we thought had one of the better off seasons this past summer. So what's your take on how it all played out in this series?
Well, I think it really kind of came down to great defense and great rebounding by Minnesota. I mean, the Nuggets were almost a 50% field goal shooting team during the regular season, but they were under 44% from the field in this series. And Minnesota also out-rebounded the Nuggets by almost 9 boards a game. So, when, defense travels, rebounding is all about hard work generally. The Wolves overcame, the loss of 2 important guys with Anthony Edwards and Dante DiVincenzo. But, Jaden McDaniels was huge at both ends. And look, it's not like the cupboard was bare in Minnesota. I mean, you got Randall, you got Reed, Gobert, who was really good. And, they had enough bigs to kind of counter Joker and Aaron Gordon. But, they're going to have to be much better in this next series.
They really are. Before we get to that next series, World B, what was your takeaway from this first round matchup?
I thought Minnesota was the most impressive team of all in the first round. I think their defense was really impressive. They held the league's most efficient offense in Denver to 108 points per 100 possessions. Now, to put that in perspective, first of all, they averaged like 121 points per 100 possessions, the Nuggets did during the regular season. But to put that 108.2 rating in perspective, the Nets were the least efficient offense during the regular season. Their efficiency rating was 108.2 points per 100 possessions. That's what the Minnesota Timberwolves did to the league's best offense, completely shut them down. And I'll be honest with you, I know he's probably not going anywhere, but we all talked about Giannis. Where's his destination, this offseason? Joker's running out of time here, for his best year to get a championship. Every year is another year, just like with Giannis. So another first-round exit. We'll see what the future holds for him, but I imagine they'll try and build around him. But if he wants out, if he's frustrated, Giannis may not be the only big name in the offseason we're talking about.
Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on that. It's definitely going to be interesting as there are some question marks for the future of the Denver Nuggets moving forward. Now, speaking of the Minnesota Timberwolves, and something that really impressed me was how they went from one fighting Illini to another. First, it was Ayo Dosunmu having a gigantic impact for the Wolves as, he was doing extremely well. Then he goes down with the sore right calf, which has him out here for Game 1 starts round 2. But then it was second-year guard Terrence Shannon Jr., also from Illinois, who stepped up in the Wolves Game 6 starting lineup and exploded for 24 points on 9 of 20 shooting in 35 minutes of play. And he did all that without committing a turnover, I might add. So really impressive stuff there. And with Minnesota being without Anthony Edwards in that series, Dante DiVincenzo, of course, being out for the remainder of the playoffs, these are 2 guys, especially as this series in round 2 moves into game 3, game 4, possibly game 5. These are guys that are going to have tremendous impacts on the series, even with Anthony Edwards back, who's reportedly going to give it a go here in game 1 here tonight. So hopefully Terrence Shannon Jr. can step up to the challenge and deliver, because if Minnesota is going to have any chance of knocking off the San Antonio Spurs, I have a feeling Terrence Shannon Jr. is going to have to play a part in that as well. Anyone have anything else to add as far as this series is concerned, or should we move on to what I'm really looking forward to in the Spurs-Wolves series? Because we're going to be treated to the current Defensive Player of the Year in Wemby going up against his fellow Frenchman, who has won the most of them in league history. Bruce, what do you think of that matchup just in general?
The two greatest French centers in NBA history are going to match up. Exactly what you said. You know, Wemby is this year's Defensive Player of the Year. If he wins that award 3 more times, which seems pretty likely,
very doable,
he'll tie Gobert, as well as Ben Wallace and Dikembe Mutombo, who have also won it 4 times. And, you know, barring injury, Wemby will probably pass 4, you know, in another 4 years, you know, the way he's going. Look, during the regular season, Minnesota beat these guys 2 times in 3 games. They're a really experienced playoff team. They've been to the conference finals the last 2 seasons, okay? They've made the playoffs every year under Chris Finch, you know, 5 straight years. But, you know, the Spurs took the league by storm this year. I mean, 62-20, second best record in the league. And with, you know, Edwards looking to return well ahead of schedule, if the Wolves can somehow steal one on the road in games 1 or 2, this series could get really, really interesting because, you know, Spurs go 9 deep, quality at every position, 2 players with NBA championship rings, friend of the show, Luke Cornett, and Harrison Barnes, who was a starter on the Warriors' first championship team. So San Antonio's favored, but we've seen so many wacky things happen in this playoffs. I mean, the Wolves should have what we would call a puncher's chance, but I do expect the Spurs to advance. But Minnesota's going to push them hard, possibly even to 7 games. And as you mentioned, Dosunmu was going to miss the first game, but when he does return, keep an eye on him. He was 12 out of 22 from downtown against Denver, 55%. So that's that could be a huge weapon for Minnesota.
Now, World B, you were just praising Minnesota's defense in round 1 against the Nuggets. Do you think they can slow down the San Antonio Spurs?
Well, one thing is for sure, you know, the Spurs quietly, you know, rolled in their first round series over Portland. But let's not forget, game 3 down by 15, game 4 down by 19. They came back and won, but, you know, they found themselves in quite a hole here. So let's not just, you know, pass the Spurs off to the conference finals just yet. The thing I'm most interested in with Minnesota is, you know, in that series over Denver in the first round, they dominated in the paint. They outscored Denver by about 12 points a game in the paint, or the restricted area, excuse me, even more dominating at the rim. That's not going to happen against, you know, the Spurs when you have Wemby. Portland shot 7 of 21 at the rim when Wemby was defending, 33%. That's more likely what's going to happen. So what are we going to see? We're going to see a team that really cut down on his threes in the first round in Minnesota. You know, they had a 3-point attempt rate of 34% in the first round. In the regular season, it was like 42%, 43%. So they dominated inside. They went back in there. They're going to have to see him play more outside in, and we'll see if they can hit their shot. But it's going to be a different look for Minnesota offensively that we saw during the regular season, or during the first round, excuse me. And one more thing about Minnesota, Bruce mentioned how they did fairly well against the Spurs in the regular season. They averaged 120 points per 100 possessions against the Spurs. But when Wemby was on the court, that got knocked down to 114 per 100 possessions. Not bad, but certainly definitely Wemby makes an impact in this game and this series in general.
Now, real quickly here, we got to make serious predictions here. I know we're not keeping tabs on these, but we've got to make them here. So, Bruce, I'll let you start us out. Who you got?
Spurs in 7, maybe 6.
Okay, World?
I put down the Spurs in 6.
I got Spurs in 6 as well. I think Wemby's going to be too much for Minnesota to handle, and he's going to get the upper hand. on fellow Frenchman Rudy Gobert, despite Rudy's impressive play, especially defensively in round one. Now, sticking out west, another very disappointing end of the season goes to the Houston Rockets, who were finally put out of their misery in Game 6 by the Lakers, who started off the series up 3-0 before Houston flashed a slight pulse and a sign of life there at the very end. But all in all, Bruce, the Rockets are a first-round exit after having big aspirations heading into the season with KD aboard. They went on to win 52 games this year. They were led by a very healthy and productive Durant all season long, and then end up having him join Fred VanVleet and Steven Adams as key vets to not log a single minute this playoffs. So it was quite a roller coaster ride in H-Town this year. Where do the Rockets go from here?
Well, who knows what's going to happen with Kevin Durant, but I remember at the time saying, I felt their season started going sideways when they lost Steven Adams. I mean, yeah, the VanVleet loss was big, but that happened prior to the start of the season. But with that, and Fred VanVleet, as good as he was not like one of the spirit animals on that team. Steven Adams was that guy.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think when he went down, a lot of their, kind of emotional juice went with him. But then, Durant kind of goes AWOL or whatever it was. I mean, he didn't give him much in the series. Ime Udoka was kind of throwing some of his guys under the bus. Reed Shepherd, he kind of almost called him afraid or something to that effect. But I would prefer to look at the Lakers winning the series as opposed to Houston losing it, because it's like, Luka, this guy who was supposed to be like an MVP, he didn't play a game. LeBron resumed his role as option number one, and he pretty much willed this team to a 4-2 series win. I mean, he willed them to a 3-0 lead, and at that point, it was just a matter of time. He did it without Austin Reeves for the first 4 games, and Reeves returned in, Game 5 and, gave LeBron some help. But a few other guys really did step up, I thought, for the Lakers. Marcus Smart had a really nice series. Luke Kennard at times, Rui Hachimura, DeAndre Ayton even. They all had, moments to push LA past the team in Houston. Couldn't even throw it in the ocean. Houston didn't even average 100 points in this series. In fact, they didn't even average 99. So I would prefer to give the Lakers the love as opposed to saying Houston blew it.
All right, World B.
Yeah, I agree with Bruce. This was more, to me, it was more about what the Lakers did, and it was defensively. Let's not care. So this was not a great offensive series for either team. I know LeBron put up numbers, but it was not the most impressive performance offensively for the Lakers. It was more about their defense, where they kind of struggled during the season. Yeah, they held Houston to 105.2 points per 100 possessions. That's like over 12 points per 100 possessions, less than what Houston did during the regular season. Yeah, Bruce mentioned Steven Adams. They definitely missed him on the offensive glass. They had a historic offensive rebounding season in terms of percentage overall, but it really went downhill after Adams got hurt. And think about this. Houston during the regular season had a rebound percentage. They grabbed 55% of all available rebounds overall. In the playoffs here, in the series here, LA out-rebounded them. They had the higher rebound percentage. So that's not something. DeAndre Ayton, who we spend countless times joking, making fun of, whatever. First 4 games, he grabs 24 defensive rebounds total. Last 2, he grabs 20. I mean, he just that's the kind of stuff they're going to need in this series coming up. And Bruce mentioned LeBron James. I mean, at his age, going for 27-7 in a series, only Joel Embiid and Joker did that in the first round this year. So they're going to need another one out of him at least of those kind of numbers. But yeah, you'd like to see LeBron shoot the ball a little bit better. You definitely need Austin Reeves to shoot the ball better. 2 of 12 from 3 in the 2 games he played. So you hope that this rest will get him more time to get back into it, because they're really going to need everything clicking if they want to beat a team like Oklahoma City that absolutely dominated them during the regular season.
Yeah, and I got my concerns with DeAndre Ayton this next series. I think he's going to be out there looking like a chicken with his head cut off. I think the Oklahoma City Thunder is ready to expose him in pick and rolls. I think he's a guy that's going to get in early foul trouble despite the improvements we saw this year. I just don't think this is the matchup or the series to where DeAndre Ayton can really shine. I think with Sengun kind of being a slower paced big man, non-athletic, he looked good in moments, but I think the Ayton trolls are really going to come out here on Twitter here very soon.
I'm just curious. We talked about, you mentioned this is not a series where DeAndre Ayton will shine. Is there a series that we can find out there where he has the ability to shine? I mean, I talked about he was good for a couple of games here, but yeah, DeAndre Ayton shining in a series is not. It's not on my playoff bingo card.
Well, let me rephrase that. I don't see him shining in even one game this year. So I'll go bold and say not even one game really stands out as a.
Well, that's more like it.
Now, do you guys know what Mark Dagnall, JJ Redick, and LeBron James all have in common?
I do not.
World?
None of them have ever been in my house.
Okay, well, that's one thing. But another thing is they're all 41 years old. So keep that in mind as we're watching King James out there on the court. I thought that was a pretty fun fact going into this series and quite remarkable, if you ask me, with LeBron's legacy for sure.
Yeah, and when it's a 4-1 series victory for Oklahoma City, if you're into numerology, right?
So is that your prediction, 4-1? Are you giving the Lakers a win?
Yes, because I never predict sweeps because I do have respect for all playoff teams, but I think it's going to be 4-1. But if it is a 4-game sweep, I will not be shocked.
All right, World B?
It's hard to imagine LA taking more than one game in this series. On the other hand, I didn't think LA would take any games in the last series, if you remember. And I'm eating my words on that one because that was about as lousy a prediction as it gets. But, Oklahoma City goes 4-0, beats them by almost 30 points a game. It's the largest point differential among conference opponents, this season for any two conference opponents. They outscored. The Thunder outscored the Lakers by 92 points in 87 minutes when SGA was on the court. That's a ridiculous number. That's just absolute domination, which is what you would expect. Oklahoma City did basically what we expect them to do in the first round. And the third straight year they've had a sweep in the first round, by the way. That's just, taking care of business. Like we should expect something different from them at this point. The number one offense in the first round. So it's going to be tough if the Lakers can't perform offensively better than they did in the first round. One game is probably going to be it.
Yeah, and I think JJ Redick was quoted after a practice in preparation for Game 1 of this series, and when asked about the Lakers' regular season matchups and whether or not they could learn from those game tapes, JJ came out and said, and I quote, "We couldn't learn a lot from 3 of those games because we were god awful." So I think that's how the series is going to go. OKC's on a mission, number one, and they have not played with their food so far throughout 4 games with Phoenix. I see this being a clean sweep. I'll go out and say I don't see the Lakers winning a single game because I think the Thunder understand and prioritize winning each of these so that they can get the rest and not have to overexhaust themselves heading into what they hope to be the next round. So really like where their mindset is right now. All right, shifting gears to the Eastern Conference. All but one series went the distance in round 1, if you can believe that, which was truly amazing. So let's go ahead and discuss a series that went 6 games, but definitely felt like it just went 5 games, given the facts that World B, your Knicks blew the doors off the Hawks on the road in Game 6. Did you happen to have the Knicks covering 50 points to close out the series? I'm curious.
It's one of the few things I did not get right when it came to this series.
Okay.
I got a lot of things wrong. I thought the series would go 7, if you recall, and it didn't. It was just unbelievable domination by the Knicks. Game 6 was a train wreck if you're a Hawks fan. For the Knicks fan like myself, it was something that it was so dominating. I couldn't stop watching. You just wanted to see how big could they do it? How big could the lead get? And it just kept growing and growing. It was really unexpected too. A victory was not unexpected because they basically established after falling behind 2-1 in the series. Both losses, by the way, were 1-point losses. They could have easily had swept the game if they had blown a game at the Garden. But over those final 3 games, they outscored Atlanta by 96 points in 3 games. That's just they absolutely dominated. They pushed them around. It was really just an incredible performance by the Knicks, and topped off by a historic performance in game 6, where nobody saw that coming. But I'm certainly glad it showed up.
Yep, Bruce.
The final game of that series was arguably the worst playoff ass kicking ever. I remember saying to my wife as we were watching some of that game, the halftime score was 83-36, and I said, this is like a UConn women's score against a team like Quinnipiac, okay?
Yeah.
And I remember saying last week on this very show that if Karl Anthony Towns played the same way he did in his Game 4 2010 masterpiece, Atlanta would not win another game. He did, and they didn't. As for OG Anunoby, he was out of this world in the Hawks series. The dude won a championship with the Raptors back in 2019, you may recall. He's in his 9th season. He's still just 28 years old. His two-way play was incredible against Atlanta. And oh, by the way, as we tape this show on Monday night, we're coming to the end of the 3rd quarter. The Knicks are well ahead. Anunoby, 18 points, 7 out of 8 from the floor, 2 for 2 from the line. Shot the ball 10 times, made 9 of them. This dude is on his own special mission.
Yeah, and that's what's really surprising. I'm glad you brought up Game 1 between the Sixers and Knicks, because once again, the Knicks are in complete domination mode right now, with a commanding lead, over a 30-point lead here heading into the 4th quarter. So really 2 games in a row, they're just riding that momentum and really picking up steam when they need it most. And you're right, OG Anunoby and Karl Anthony Towns are the 2 biggest difference makers and why they've gotten to this degree of a separation. We know what Jalen Brunson's going to do on a nightly basis. We know what Josh Hart brings defensively and as a glue guy for this team. Bridges has his moments, but really the 2 guys that have really stood out are OG Anunoby and Karl Anthony Towns, and why they've become just such a dangerous team here recently. So keep an eye on New York, because especially as we're going to talk about here now, Bruce, with your Celtics out of the way, boy, did the door really creak open for the New York Knicks. And it was a very unexpected event, at least in my opinion, Bruce, that your Boston Celtics, had what I felt was a commanding 3-1 lead after defeating the Sixers 128-96 in Philly, only to drop all 3 of the remaining games in the series to lose in 7. So kind of opening the door to you here, because I'm curious to get your thoughts on how it all transpired in the last 3 games of the series.
First of all, Boston lost 3 of the 4 games on their home court. Okay. So, that's always been a problem with Boston. They lose games at home when you don't think they would. But look, they would have been fine except for one little thing, Joel Embiid's return.
Yeah.
They could have overcome the brilliant Tyrese Maxey, also known as Andrew Toney 2.0, and they would have even been able to defend VJ Edgecombe well enough to move on, but they did not, nor have they ever found a way to slow down Embiid. Besides his obvious power and skills, he draws more fouls than anyone. He gets your entire team in foul trouble. And it's not even just how he got Nimi Keita on the bench for long stretches. It's also the way he personally gets the other team in the bonus and creates free throw opportunities for all of his teammates. It causes opposing defenders at every position to play less aggressive defense, because you don't want Philly shooting free throws for the final 6 minutes of every quarter. It's just it's a superpower in many ways. So look, in the postmortem of Boston's loss, a lot of Boston fans are clamoring for a Jaylen Brown-Giannis trade, which they're tripping. I don't want Jaylen Brown gone. But there's another guy on the Bucks that I feel Boston should try and get, and hopefully it wouldn't cost him Jaylen Brown, and that's Miles Turner. I think he would be very helpful against bigs like Embiid. He can block shots. He can make threes. And while he does have some obvious shortcomings, he's still 6'11" and 250 pounds, and he can battle the Embiids and Jalen Durans of the world, at least from a physical standpoint. Cade is a nice player, but he is not a physical player. He's more of a finesse big. So I say to Boston, keep the Jays together. They've been very successful. Giannis is great, but losing Brown would be too big of a loss. So see if you can pry Miles Turner away, and I think that would be an upgrade for Boston.
All right, World B.
This is a more than any other period in the league's history. This is a make or miss league. And Boston's one of those teams that was living proof of that. They weren't hitting their shots over the final 3 games. They paid the price. They had a 13-point lead in the second half of Game 5 when they could have just closed it out there, and they couldn't hang on to that lead. And the last 3 games, they were barely over a point per possession, 100.5 points per 100 possessions. That's not. They were the second most efficient offense in the league this year, behind only Denver. So it's a make or miss league. Boston's MO is, if we're shooting the 3 well, you really can't beat us. But if we're not, we open the door for anybody to come in and take over. We saw it last year with the Knicks series when they couldn't hit those threes. It really opened the door for a nice couple of comebacks by the Knicks. And this time around, as Bruce mentioned, Joel Embiid return was a big spark. But it was really Philly's defense or Boston's offense, however you want to look at it, that really was the key over those final 3 games.
Now, I got 2 questions, one for each of you here. World B, I'll start with yours. Knicks Sixers, round 2. Was this the ideal matchup for you, or would you have preferred Boston?
Well, I'll take the Sixers any day of the week over the Celtics.
Sure.
I would have figured the Celtics would be pretty motivated after what happened last season to come back and play New York. They just didn't get there, but I think the Sixers just aren't as deep as the Knicks are. We'll talk about Game 1, I'm sure, or whatever, but that's kind of, Bruce and I were talking about before, it's kind of a throwaway game based on what Philly had to do to come back in their series with Boston. They win Game 7 on the road on a Sunday or a Saturday, come back on Monday, have to play another road game against a ridiculously hot Knicks team. That wasn't a recipe for success by them, not to mention the fact that they're just not that deep. They're at best 7 deep, but it's looking more like they're just a 6 deep rotation. And that's not going to cut it. It's just not going to cut it against a Knicks team that went from bench being the biggest dilemma last season for them to maybe the best bench in the league. We talk about all the starters that they have and how well they perform. They're loaded coming off the bench right now, and their guys are playing really at the top of the game, and they can throw a lot of guys out there. And Philly really doesn't have the guys to compete with New York on that level. So Game 1 was a kind of a throwaway game, and I put it right in here, Knicks in 7. I still think it's going to be a long series. But if Knicks in whole court, that's all that matters.
Yeah, the Knicks definitely have a lot of guys that they can throw out there, and they also have a lot that they can throw just at Joel Embiid in general, whether it be Karl-Anthony Towns, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, Mitchell Robinson, Josh Hart at times, and seems like they're doing an exceptional job here tonight. Of course, we're taping during the game, so we're not able to focus in on this one. But Embiid, as of tonight, 25 minutes played, 3 of 11 from the field, just 14 points in the 4th quarter. I know he was a game-time decision with a hip contusion, so it seems to, always be banged up. But at the same time, just limiting his touches, it seems like 11 shots for Embiid here tonight, only making 3. Give credit to that Knicks defense for sure. Bruce, I know we're bouncing around here, and that's my fault, but got to ask you this, just one last Celtic question. If you could go back in time and reverse the Vucevic for Simons trade, do you do that, or do you not think that makes a difference in round 1?
Oh, yes, I would do it because, Simons was a valuable weapon for those guys. He could make threes and, he could get his own 3 off the dribble, whatever. Vooch, unfortunately, was giving me Enes Kanter flashbacks when it came to trying to play defense, at the center position. He was a statue. Okay. He didn't even take off his warm-ups in game 7.
Mhm.
And Joe had that crazy starting lineup, which is something that, I'm still trying to figure out what he was doing there. I guess he was just hoping to shake things up a little bit. But yes, I would love to have a do-over on that, even if Simons was just a rental to the end of the season.
All right. And your prediction for the Knicks-Sixers series?
Well, look, I think it's safe to say we're only a few seconds into the fourth quarter as we're recording this, but Knicks took game 1 comfortably. But in spite of this loss, I think it's going to be a very competitive series, both on the court and among the rival fans. I mean, look, Embiid versus Towns and Mitch Robinson, Maxey and Edgecombe against Brunson, Bridges, and Hart, Paul George and Kelly Oubre against Anunoby. I mean, look, the edge goes to New York, definitely. I see Philly getting 2 wins, but this is New York series to lose. The Knicks bigs will hold their own against Embiid, and Alvarado can come in and dog VJ Edgecombe when Brunson needs a blow. I like New York's bench, as World B and yourself pointed out. Mike Brown has done a really good job using those guys all season, much better than Tibbs ever did, which is why their bench is good because, they've played meaningful games, meaningful minutes, got lots of, important, time on the court together. It was always something that made me question, the greatness of Tibbs as a coach. And of course, Mike Brown, not only a friend of the show, but a friend of mine. I am totally rooting for the Knicks to go all the way, which is probably the first time in my life that I've ever made that statement. But friendships matter more to me than a lot of other things, as you guys can certainly relate.
Absolutely. And I'm just glad we got that on record here on the 48 Minutes podcast. We'll have that forever to cherish now, Bruce. So thanks for doing
Clip and
that.
Save, baby. Clip and save.
Exactly. And I'm glad you brought up the fans in this battle between Philly and New York, because I'm sure you guys saw the news here today. The Knicks have decided, if you have a zip code in the greater Philadelphia area, they're not going to sell you tickets to any of the Madison Square Garden games in New York. And then MB countered that and pleaded on social media to Sixers fans to please not sell their tickets to Knicks fans. So we're already getting that started very early here as far as the fans rivalry is concerned. But I'm with you guys. I got the Knicks in 6. I think that Philly will win a game or 2 in this series. I mean, we saw the magic that VJ Edgecombe and Tyrese Maxey can have in that backcourt. I think they're going to have their moments and pull away some games. Obviously, I would fully expect that Joel Embiid responds to this struggle in game 1. I think he's going to have a bounce back game here in either game 2 or especially game 3 back home in Philly. So they'll get a game or 2, but I think this is the Knicks one to lose, and I see them walking away and advancing. Now, last but certainly not least, we can't forget to discuss the Cavs-Raptors series. It was set to be a Game 7 James Harden experience, and one that we didn't know exactly what we were going to get from James, but despite the Beard's lackluster shooting, going 3 of 9 from the field in Game 7, the Cavs did handle business in Game 7 at home. World B, major props to the Toronto Raptors. They took the Cavaliers the distance in round 1 despite their lack of playoff experience and being shorthanded without starters Brandon Ingram and Emmanuel Quickley.
Yeah, it was an impressive performance, and it took a second half for domination more or less by the Cavaliers in Game 7 to really put the Raptors away, who were trying to win on a Cleveland's home court, and it looked like for a while they were going to be right there. It just didn't work out for them. They really got kind of beat up on the glass at the end. Jared Allen had a marvelous game, just an impressive performance by him with almost a 20-20, added about 3 blocks and assists. It was really something impressive by him in a game they really needed him. Cleveland, when they had Harden, Mitchell, Mobley, and Allen on the court in this series, 101 minutes, they were actually outscored. So, go figure how it's going to translate for the next round. Their defense stepped up when it had to. The last 2 games, they had really solid defensive performance. And as I mentioned, they really dominated the glass. They outscored Toronto by 28 points combined in the last 2 games and second chance points. it was really an impressive display. But as you would expect with two bigs like Mobley and Allen, but it took the last two games for them to do it. And let's not forget, if RJ Barrett doesn't hit that three in Game 6 that bounced up and almost hit the lights and fall down, the series is over in 6. So it was still a solid, gutsy performance by Toronto, but I wouldn't, be as skeptical of Cleveland's performance yet, because they could have easily put this game away in 6. The series, excuse me.
Bruce?
I've always liked Jared Allen, and he carried the Cavs in Game 7 on Sunday. He had 14 points and 10 rebounds in the third quarter, okay? Early in the game, it's funny. I remember watching a play. He was fouled hard, high on his shoulders by A.J. Lawson. It's one of those plays that was reviewed for a flagrant but not called. But a lot of times, a guy that gets fouled like that will jump up and get in someone's face. He didn't do that. His reaction was not to stare the guy down. He walked crisply away with this look on his face that basically said, okay, so this is how we're going to play it. And then in the second half, he was everywhere. In the final minutes, he did get assessed a flagrant 1 when he fouled Jacoby Walter, but the game was decided by then. But Allen and Evan Mobley are going to really need to bring that toughness against Jalen Duren and those beefy Pistons bigs. Toronto made huge progress this season, and I'm going to call it right now. Early candidate for most improved player next year, Colin Murray Boyles. Keep your eyes on him, basketball world.
I like it. All right. World B, do you have a prediction for the Pistons-Cavs series, and what's your outlook on that?
Yeah, I have. This is a surprise for many, but not really. Not if you look at how the first round went. I think the Cavaliers are going to win this series in 6 games.
Wow.
All right. Bruce?
They're both coming off hard-fought 7-game series. Neither team has an advantage with any extra rest. Both of their first-round series ended on Sunday. The best player in the series is Cade Cunningham. Second best player is Donovan Mitchell. Tobias Harris had a great series against the Magic. Jalen Duren did not, although in Game 7, he did bounce back with a 15-15 effort. Allen and Mobley, as I said, really going to have to step up against a rugged Pistons bunch. I like Cleveland's shot making more than Detroit's, but I think Detroit's defense is better. So I really do agree with World. It's going to be a close series, at least 6 games, but I do think Detroit's going to find a way to come out on top. And Detroit coach J.B. Bickerstaff gets his revenge over the Cavaliers, who fired him after the 23-24 season.
Yeah, that revenge will be sweet if JB can go ahead and get that. And I have him getting that in 7 games. I think Detroit is going to have to go the distance to do that against this Cleveland team. It's not going to be an easy task for them, given the twin towers that the Cavaliers have in Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, the firepower they have at the guard position with Donovan Mitchell and James Harden, especially given the fact that Detroit did struggle at times throughout their own first-round series against the Orlando Magic. I like Cleveland to go ahead and put up a good test here, but I see JB in 7.
One final word on that Pistons Magic series. I mean, the Pistons, they dug themselves a deep hole against Orlando, but I think they're emerging from this series as a much more dangerous team because they faced adversity against a very tough physical bunch, and they found another gear when they needed it. Because, all season long, they were front runners in the East. They were never out of the top spot in the East after the first few games of the season, and they never looked back. But when they had to come from behind in this series, and they had to not only come behind 3-1, but in that Game 6 when they were down by 24 points and came all the way back and won, they dug deep and they showed themselves to be a lot more gritty than they even probably realized.
Yeah, and let's go ahead and talk about those Magic, World B. I did not forget about them. Of course, unfortunately, they did blow that 3-1 series lead and what seemed to be an opportunity of a lifetime to be the NBA's Cinderella story in this year's playoffs. And for as much crap as we give the Hawks for this embarrassing Game 6 loss on their home floor, how about Orlando in Game 6, scoring just 19 points in the entire second half in what seemed to be their golden opportunity to close out the series at home? So just kind of curious of how that series unfolded for you as a Magic fan. And, your outlook into everything that's transpired since the series ended with, the coaching news.
Well, I'll tell you this, as much fun as I had watching the Knicks do what they did over the Hawks in Game 6, it was the complete opposite the next night, watching Orlando completely implode. And it wasn't even a situation. They just couldn't hit shots. They just absolutely couldn't. One field goal in the fourth quarter. They made, I think, one of their last 27 shots from the field. So none of them from 3-point range. It's offensive shooting has been a problem for this team, not just this season, for decades. So it was just, you didn't think it would implode like this. They couldn't hit shots. It was 19 points on 47 possessions and a half. That's unbelievable. That's just, can't put it's hard to comprehend. And I'll give them credit. They came out in Game 7, had the lead after the first quarter. Palabé and Caro came to play. Nobody else did. Nobody else could make a shot. And as you mentioned, it cost Jamal Mosley his job. I got a feeling it would have cost him his job if they went, in 6 games or whatever they lost, like we figured they were going to lose in this series, no matter what. Game 6 did not help situation. And, I was a little I understand why they let him go. You got to make that next step at some point. You got a young group, and it's 3 first-round playoff losses. You got to take that next step. And as much as I'm a fan of, I look at coaches and I think about where was the franchise before he got there? Where is the franchise now? They're absolutely in a better place now than they were when he took over. There's no question about it. They were a laughing stock when he took over. Now, a lot of good moves along the way, but his coaching got him to this point. But, after a while, your voice gets old. He's been there a while. Your voice gets old after a while. It happens to everybody. I think it happened to Pat Riley with the Knicks back in the 90s. Your voice gets old after a while, and maybe a new step, a new fresh guy coming in and changing things out. They certainly can't do a whole lot. They invested a whole lot to get Desmond Bane there, and he played well overall. Need a bigger performance out of him in Game 7 to keep that game close, and didn't get it till the end. So they probably made the right coaching move, although I'm a Jamal Mosley fan. We'll see what happens in the offseason, but overall, it's a disappointment if you're a Magic fan like I am. The season was a disappointment.
Yeah, I think Jamal Mosley will land on his feet somewhere next season. But Bruce, curious to get your thoughts on everything Orlando.
Well, they pushed all their chips in the middle of the table when they made the Desmond Bane deal. Because as Worldby correctly pointed out, they haven't been able to make threes for a long time. But you know what? That gave them one guy that could make a three. They probably need at least 2 more. Okay. So that I don't know exactly how they're going to go about doing that. Because Banchero, he can make a three once in a while, but you don't want him out there shooting threes. You want that guy closer to the basket because, that's his game is more suited to that. So look, it's as somebody once said, and even repeated on this show tonight, it's a make or miss league. Too many misses, not enough makes. Find yourself some shooters. There's probably somebody out there they can get. Maybe Dennis Schroeder will be available. He's probably going to be looking for a new team. Although we were pretty smart last week when we did that thing, by the way. Right after we did that thing.
Good job with that.
That was
good timing.
And let's see what else he brings to the table. I mean, a former Piston, right? So he's got some revenge factor going there too. He's a former everything. Yeah. But Orlando. What's that?
Not a former Magic yet.
That's true. But yeah, Orlando is never going to get over the hump unless they can get some better shooting on that team from downtown.
By the way, to Bruce's point about needing more shooters, 2 years ago, remember they got Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. They signed him to a free agent deal, and they needed outside shooting. They finished last that year in three-point percentage, made less than a third of their three-point attempts. So they go and make the big trade for Desmond Bane, and that helped them improve all the way to 27th in three-point percentage. So they definitely need – Desmond Bane had a decent year overall from three-point range, but they definitely need some help. And Bruce is right. Banchero can occasionally hit the three, but that's not where you want him. That's not where he's at his best.
All right, and we'll be your New York Knicks are up here with 5 minutes left, up 34 points. So I'm going to congratulate you on the Game 1 victory. I hope this isn't a 48 minutes curse like we talked about the Knicks just a few weeks ago, thinking they were going to win the game, and then all things kind of spiraled out of control after we ended recording. But I think you got this one in the bag.
If they blow a 34-point lead in 5 minutes, yes, we will. The curse will be legit, and will never ever go away.
Well, we might have to just record another show here tonight.
Maybe a duo for you guys, though.
Release. So
if the Knicks blow this lead, I am not working overtime for them.
All right. And with that will do it for this edition of the 48 Minutes podcast on Believe. Thanks for tuning in. And we'll be back with you later on this week to be sure you're up to date in 48 on all things around the association. Take care, everyone.